Hello wonderful people, Connor Whitmore here again with another video for you on the Nawtystep channel, and today I'm going to be talking about the new album from Trampa, Disrespect. This is the debut LP and first on Never Say Die for over 3 years from Ricky Moore, aka Trampa, who over the last half decade has grown to become one of the household names on the label with one of the most distinctive sounds in modern dubstep, a compact and gnarly tear-out sound that no one has been able to do quite like him. Current big names like Marauder citing him as their main inspiration, as Tear Out has gone through its own blow-up, both sonically and in terms of fandom. Been quite quiet the last few years, barring an EP in 2019 and the odd original or remix here and there. And amidst that relative quiet, I and many others have been wondering what exactly he's been up to for the most part, whether he was cooking up something bigger all along. Well, it turns out that instinct was right, as here we have miling away his biggest project to date, a debut solo full-length LP. And I must admit, I've often considered over the years quite how such a distinctive style would translate over the stretch of an album, especially one as compact and to the point as his usually is, you know. Not just a case here of whether there'd be enough variety, but also whether it would have the expansive feel that you'd usually associate with the album format. Would he stick to his tried and trusted method for Disrespect, or branch out and experiment a bit? The answer being a bit of both, as this LP not only displays everything we know Trampa for, but also sees him try his hand at a couple of new genres along the way as well. Take track 4 Signal, where he dips into the D&B breaks hybrid kind of style. And yeah, you heard that right. Loving the euphoric, old school Prodigy vibes to the opening here, very uplifting. And on my first listen through, it led me to wonder whether happy Trampa music was something I'd ever heard before. The heavier moments here, they're not anything special ideas-wise, you know, pretty basic for the genre. But it just sounds so good to hear him do something completely different like this. And for what it is, it's delivered very effectively. You know, the arrangement and construction, very on point. It's naughty. Also in that kind of style and layout, we get the penultimate track on the album, Back to Me. Another very uplifting introduction here, kind of old school feel to it again, and the high-pitched main sample that we get matches the instrumental very well. D&B, more of the foghorn variety on this track, and again, I wouldn't say these ideas are particularly creative. But once more, the arrangement is fantastic, gets you properly in the mood, loads of energy surging through it, especially the second drop, which is one of my favourites on the LP. That Trampa sound blaring out, but it's still so controlled. Like, super fat, but it still feels minimal, and I love that. And it's tunes like these that you hope will provide a way of getting people into D&B more. Elsewhere, on the experimental front, we get him dipping into a more strict breakbeat structure with All Night alongside Nole. Another great introduction with the angled garagey beat, and honestly, I love hearing him do this kind of stuff. It sounds sick, with Nole's fierce and articulated vocals slotting in seamlessly too. It could have maybe been mixed a bit higher, but as a combination of elements and just the way that everything works together there, in that introduction and build, it's perfection. When it comes to the heaviness here, the main point that I think I want to make is that he must have had so much fun putting it together, which for me is the biggest compliment one can pay it, because even though it's new ground for him, it sounds like a very genuine and true expression of his style, and effectively done. It's gritty, raw, earthy, and again got that old school rave-like Prodigy flavour kind of woven in as well. It's a pure slapper. Also really enjoying the glowing midsection or midway point that we get here. A bit of a reflective moment for the track and the LP overall, and for me, one of the best sections on the whole thing. And the extended outro that we get too on All Night, you know, not cutting off too quickly, yet gradually breaking down, expertly done. On the flip side of that good experimentation on Disrespect, we get a few tracks here that hardly provide much new for his style at all, if anything. The opener and title track brings in the album really well with its super dark, brooding introduction. Feels like you're walking up to the boxing ring, and the creation of tension here, the patience in the construction of that opening sequence to the album is amazing. The heaviness though, just being another variation of the tearing synths and interjecting vocals, the stop-start delivery that we've heard time and again from him by now. Like, don't get me wrong, it is good. I like in particular how the gnarliness of it is unleashed more as it goes on, but for the most part it just feels like a track we've heard from him before, time and time again, just very, very typical of him. Same can be said for track 3, Pull Up, yet another superb introduction kicking things off here. Quite a regal feel to it actually, as if Trampa's just saying, I'm the king here. The heaviness backing that up in that we get a good mix of synths and samples. The dynamic between everything works, and again, the good becomes more apparent as it goes on. His dubstep structure becomes so apparent even at this early point in the album that I'm left thinking more about how formulaic his approach is than anything good about the ideas. Basically, were it not for track 2 Generals being a slight variation on his usual style, which I'll talk more about in a bit, then this opening for you would simply be far too similar. We also get the pretty tiresome middle two, Your Love and Sickhead, that don't add much to the LP or shed new light on Trampa's style. I really like how Your Love carries on the breaks percussion from Signal just before it, and the vocal sample is pretty iconic in feel. But the drops are more blaring, aggressive, Trampa tear out, and not notably different from loads of his other stuff. Same going for Sickhead, to be honest. I mean, you know, we do get some memorable motifs here and there, the break moments in particular, but the main idea is it's just more of the same, and that's both on the LP and in his general discography. And yeah, by the end of that track, it's just a bit overbearing, leading me to wonder whether a bit of swapping around when it comes to the track listing and the pacing of Disrespect may have done it a whole world of good. Maybe, I don't know, swapping Signal with Pull Up or All Night with Sickhead just to make it a little bit less stale as it goes on. But even when you do that, you still end up with a few little clusters here and there of tracks that sound just far too similar. And yeah, bottom line, there are too many tunes here of that kind. That being said, there are also a few tracks here that present the classic Trampa design, yet which have more of an elevated feel to them, separating them from the rest. The closer, for example, Illest, by virtue of the percussion being some of the cleanest on the LP. More classic Trampa sound. I've heard the ideas before, but the sharpness of the backdrop just makes it that bit better on the ear. Conceptually underwhelming as a finale, but fitting, I suppose, with that approach playing such a big part on the album. On that note, there's also the alternative ending to the LP with the Beatport exclusive Rocket Fuel VIP, which doesn't alter much from the original, but again, the refined feel of the production really carries the ideas through there. Moreover, track 2 Generals with Killer P and Volgatron, where his formula's clear to hear again, but we get a more low-key execution of his style, a kind of toning down of sorts, and it really, really works. Trudging along, these fuzzy little bits of sound, very confined into itself, deep and primal, it's so good. Both Killer P and Volgatron coming through with high P lyricism and great articulation gets you in the mood. Although similar to No Lay on All Night, again, I do wish they could have been mixed just a bit higher in the track, and that there was more of them actually as well. You know, all the vocal features we get here, they're brilliant, but they are short-lived. All that leaves is track 8, arguably the most highly anticipated track on Disrespect, Shank with Space Laces. Another I wouldn't necessarily highlight for special ideas per se, but again it's that thing of elevating Trampa's sound, and who better to do that than Mr. Ian Slider himself, whose dark electric energy you can feel from the very beginning. It's genuinely like Trampa's style has been electrocuted. And yeah, there aren't really ideas to hang on to and remember here in the heaviness, but hearing how well their styles work together, it just makes you wonder how and why it hadn't happened before. The ravenous sounds of Trampa infected with the vibrant textures of Space Laces, and it really is something to behold. I also appreciate how direct it is structurally. I mean, you know me. I love a good midsection, but here, no fucking around, very to the point with what it wants to deliver. But do we get enough new unleashing of his normal style? Probably not, and that might be the main issue that I have with the LP. Getting a good dose of familiar Trampa material on the album was, I think, inevitable, but I'm not sure anyone thought that would be the case quite to this extent. There is some great experimentation here, don't get me wrong, and some good examples of his staple sound being unveiled in new ways. But in the context of a 10-track album, that newness is drowned out a bit by the tracks that sound far too similar. Again, not only within the album, but within his discography overall. Around half the tracks posing the same kind of approach and structure and sounds is simply too much, I think. You know, it gets predictable, and his formula becomes extremely apparent here. That being said, there are multiple features across the album that I find to be consistently brilliant throughout. I can't think of an introduction or build that doesn't really work in creating an atmosphere and setting up its following heaviness well. All the vocal samples and vocal features are well fitted to their respective instrumentals, and again, I can't think of one that doesn't work. And the general management of time and space here in the heavier parts of the LP, even though of course I find a lot of the drops quite samey, the arrangement of them is for me undeniably fantastic. I have said it a few times by now, but the experimentation we get, I cannot play down how much I'm enjoying it. So there is a lot of good to Disrespect. I just find myself thinking after each run through, my overriding feeling being that for a debut album we could have had even more branching out than what we get here. Opposers to that viewpoint might say, well, albums might generally be more expansive, but that's never been what Trampa's style is about. He's never gone for the epic with his approach. But in my eyes, that's kind of what an album's for, and even though we get a solid helping of the atypical Trampa sound here, a lot of it offers nothing new, and that stuff plays too big a part to the extent that the good we get here is watered down, making for a debut LP that's both great and a little bit meh in equal measure. Now in terms of my favourite on the LP, then I'm going to have to go with All Night. My favourite bit of experimentation here, and yeah, just great to hear Trampa try out these new styles, and on this track in particular, the flow's amazing, the vocal's great, so yeah, just love it. But there we have it, my review of the new LP, the debut LP from Trampa, Disrespect. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. But yeah, what did you guys make of the LP? What are you making of it overall? And which track of the 10 is your pick? Drop all of your views, thoughts, and opinions in the comment section down below. Beyond that, if you're enjoying the content, then subscribe if you're yet to, and hit the bell along the way. And my social media accounts and Discord are linked below, as well as the Nawtystep Patreon page. So yeah, if you want to help the channel grow, reach its full potential, all of that, check it out down below the link and get involved. But yeah, keep it naughty. If it's naughty, then you know, and I shall see all of you legends in the next one. Peace!